To discuss the unprecedented obstruction by my Democrat colleagues, which brings us here today, and the activity we're going to see on the floor this week and next. Article 1, Section 2, Clause 2 of the Constitution requires that every officer of the United States receive the advice and consent of the Senate. This is a very important function. At times it can seem tedious, I suppose, on the floor when we're voting on some of these, but this is contemplated by our founding fathers to be a really important part of the process of getting good qualified people in important positions in the executive branch. With that power comes responsibility, a duty. And the Democrats have completely abandoned that duty to provide the advice and consent, instead moving forward with complete obstruction. Unprecedented. Now, that term gets thrown around a lot in this town. Every day somebody says something's unprecedented, and it's not actually unprecedented. This really is unprecedented. In the almost 250 years of our country, and of course a little bit sooner than that, when we had the first Congress, a little bit later than that when we had our first Congress, we've never seen anything like this. Like, not even close. The minority leader would rather burn all the norms down than do it like we've done it before. Even though that process is sort of eroded to some degree in recent years, never anything like this. And for those of you watching at home or in the gallery here today, we're glad to have you. The Senate kind of operates in three calendars. Let's just put it in those terms, three operational modes. One is the legislative calendar, when we have bills that come up, the NDAA, the continuing resolution, appropriations bills, that kind of stuff. Now, let's be clear. What the minority leader has already said he would do, and what Democrats in this chamber have already voted for, which is to completely eliminate the legislative filibuster. If they were in charge, if they were in the position that Republicans are in right now, they'd blow it up. It's gone. DC's added as a state, maybe Puerto Rico, court packing. I mean, they voted on this stuff. I'm not making this up. They campaign on this stuff. That's what the minority leader would like to have happen on the legislative calendar. Let's talk about the impeachment calendar. Well, last year, we saw the Secretary of Homeland Security, Alejandro Mayorkas, impeached by the House of Representatives. The articles of impeachment are transferred over here. We're all sitting on our desks. And for the first time in the history of this country, there wasn't a trial. Now, trials looked a little bit different. Sometimes they're in committee, sometimes they're in front of the full Senate, but not a single instance in the history of this country where the person who was impeached who either is still alive or in that office, hasn't had a trial. So he blew that up. And now we're dealing with the executive calendar, which is essentially where all the personnel decisions are made. We approve ambassadors, we approve cabinet secretaries, judges, U.S. attorneys, marshals, all that stuff. There has been not a single instance, not one time, has there been a unanimous consent granted in this chamber. Not once. That's never happened before. And we'll talk about some of those details here as we move a little bit further along in this debate. But just to add a little meat onto the bones, in defiance of the vision of the founders, the Democrat obstruction leaves President Trump on pace to have just 426 nominees confirmed by the end of the 119th Congress. That's if we're working at the pace, which is unprecedented. I don't mind it. We can be here. I'm not afraid of hard work. But if we're here as much as we've been here just to get to that number, which is the lowest in history, less than half of what Joe Biden had at this point in time, 817, or even President Trump's first term of 715. So at the end of the first Congress, those are the numbers. So it's not even close. It's less than half of the total number. By the end of his term, we're projecting that a mere 872 confirmations, so the full 4 years, would actually get through. And that would be the first time in the history of the country that that number would fall below 1,000, compared to Joe Biden's 1,175 and President Trump's first term, which is about that same number, about 1,200, and President Obama's staggering number of almost 1,500. So it's not just slow, it's sabotage, echoing the darkest days of the most partisan feuds that we had threatening our young republic 200 years ago. Democrats have required cloture 360% more in President Trump's first term, in his first term's 200 days, than in his first. 137 nominees subjected to it, nearly double Biden's 71 and far beyond Obama's paltry 9. In the past, over 50% of every president's nominees were confirmed via voice vote or unanimous consent, until this year, where President Trump has received 0.0. Blutarsky. That's unprecedented. Under Obama, in his first 200 days, 292 nominees passed by voice vote alone. President Trump has just 135 confirmed, all via overcoming, except Marco Rubio, overcoming filibusters. Every single one, save the first one, has been filibustered. To put that in perspective, Clarence Thomas, perhaps the most controversial Supreme Court judge as far as that vote went, got 52 votes. It wasn't even filibustered. All of these are being filibustered, including the general counsel to the Department of Transportation. The average time for nomination, from nomination to confirmation, a glacial pace of 94 days. Nearly double President Trump's first term of 54, worse than Biden's 70, and a far cry from Reagan's efficient 25 days. We've shattered records with the most Senate session days and roll call votes in modern history. 126 days in the first 200, more than Biden's 121, yet the backlog swells. 139 nominees on the executive calendar, 153 in committee, 786 not yet received. This obstruction is antithetical to our constitutional design. You can have problems with nominees, you can vote no, you can even filibuster some of them. But to filibuster all of them and not have a voice vote on any of them is a symptom of something else. Trump derangement syndrome. They can't get over the fact that President Trump actually won. They thought by coming on this floor, as the minority leader did so often, of calling half the country MAGA extremists, trying to bankrupt him and his family and throw him in jail for the rest of his life, they thought that thing was over. But the American people sat in their own jury box and they watched all of this nonsense unfold for the last 4 years, and they rendered their own verdict. And it was for reform. It was for the very kind of people that President Trump is putting up for these positions. So to subvert that democratic process, the sand has been thrown into the gears of our republic in a way we've never seen before, and that's what we're here to fix. The Democrats have turned the cooling saucer of the Senate into a deep freezer. But here's the good news. A great thaw is coming. The Republicans in this place are going to return the Senate back to what it was always meant to be able to do, which is to actually function and vote on confirmations. It's not that tall of an ask. But again, blinded by TDS, and quite frankly, if you talk to some of my Democrat colleagues, like I have privately, they understand that this is a real problem. They know that this is wrong. But they can't be seen by their increasingly radical base of doing anything that would be perceived as helping President Trump. So here we are. The conditions have been set, the landscape has been made, and it's time for action. I would argue that this isn't actually even a new phenomenon. This has been a slow-moving disaster 25 years in the making. After the 2000 elections, Democrats met at a private retreat to strategize how to maximally obstruct the Republicans, 25 years ago. A couple of leftist Harvard professors concocted an idea: filibuster the executive calendar. The minority leader wasn't done there. Just yesterday, he blew up our entire system on a voice vote, on voice voting in the Senate. When push came to shove, he would rather blow up all the norms of this place to hold on to the power that is slipping away from him. He's going to have another test when it comes to continuing resolution, but we're dealing with this right now. The decisions of the minority leader over the course of the last 25 years has led us to this place. So if anybody uses the term gone nuclear, just understand we're having to deal with the nuclear option that has already been executed on the Senate chamber, which is to say we're filibustering everything and there's no unanimous consent on anything. That's the nuclear option, and we have to react to it. One final note here. What we're really trying to do is restore the balance, and using a proposal that was submitted by a couple of our Democrat colleagues in the last year or two. In their words, and this is, by the way, voting in block, their words, not my words, the showdown of the confirmation, quote, the showdown of the confirmation process that we've seen in the Senate under the last several administrations is preventing key officials from taking up their positions. The in block proposal being referred to is, quote, this common sense reform will help improve efficiency and make sure we're able to fill positions that are vital to our national security, economic success, and more. When the Democrats proposed that solution very recently, 62% of Biden's nominees had already been confirmed by voice vote. So think about that. 2/3 of his people were in place, and they were calling for the reform. Guess how many have been confirmed by voice vote now? 0%. So we're going to take them up on their offer of reform. And I appreciate the majority leader moving this forward to restore, again, the very important balance that our founders knew was necessary for this republic to survive. America demands no less. Thank you, Mr. President.